Hey everyone, and welcome back to Beyond Compassion Fatigue. My guest today is Dr. Antoine Goetchel, who is a Swiss attorney and leading expert in animal protection law. Since 1985, he has worked to advance legal protections for animals, helping to introduce the concept of the dignity of the creature into Swiss federal constitution and the Animal Protection Act. He founded the Global Animal Law Association and the Foundations for Animals in Law, and has authored 13 books and more than 50 articles on animal law. Let's welcome Dr. Antoine Goetchel. Hey, Antoine, welcome to the show. How are you today?
I'm fine, thank you very much. Greetings from snowy Zurich in Switzerland.
Yeah, well, greetings from the tundra here in northern Michigan as well. So I think we're going through the same thing right now.
Happy to be in, and I would love to be out. Yes.
All right. All right. So let's get started. Let's dive right in. So tell our audience a little bit about yourself and what initially drew you to this field of animal protection law.
I had under for them uh, not ideal conditions. I had guinea pigs when I was a child, and I realized afterwards that guinea pigs are not um, were not held in a way that they should have been. But in the 60s, 70s, so I'm 67 years old. I have three children and four grandchildren. It was not such an issue. When I studied law, I was attached to questions of fundamental rights and minorities of children, of being women, and so-called by chance, we say. A friend of mine uh, asked me if I could help him in writing a book on animal welfare law. And then I started to look to have a closer look to animal welfare organizations, to the keeping of animals, and watch a slaughtering, and wrote that book that still is active, a legal comment on animal welfare law. And I started to rethink my own behavior towards animals. And I thought, I don't want to say yes to the product and no to the production. So I stopped eating meat, and I read about animal in ethics in religion, and I wrote my legal thesis about it and started then to make lobbying work, um, for example, to bring the dignity of creature in the Swiss constitution. And that is a term that respects animals as they are, like human dignity, and to give animals a voice as worldwide unique animal welfare attorney that represented animals in court cases against their mistreaters. So, beside my normal law firm in foundations and in heritage and other stuff, I was active in animal welfare law, and also had to do a lot, not also with animal mistreaters. I had 700 cases in 3 years with animal mistreaters officially. And this is why I had to keep my, let's say, mental health in my heart and mind, but also with animal welfare organizations and lobbying work in the field of animal protection, of in the field of genetic engineering, and I had to do a lot with politicians, with scientists that had a complete other view than I, and wrote 13 books. And I had to realize that they are mostly, I wouldn't say good people, but at least people that think of themselves to be good, and they have their own um, mind, so mind shift, or their own opinion on it. And mine is not, let's say, always the better one. They trust in themselves as I do. So I got more uh, tolerant. And when I speak with, let's say, politicians or people from the animal using industry, I try not to be hateful, but to be tolerant and supportive, saying we have maybe a common goal, or at least goals that can fit. And with a good breathing technique, often I get better results instead of being just aggressive.
Yeah, I mean, that's got to be a really kind of fine line to walk, right? And so I know that the organization that you founded, Global Animal Law, it follows it has a certain like approach to these type of issues, certain values. And I imagine that must kind of help it with kind of the day-to-day struggle, whether you're dealing with these politicians who like you said have totally different viewpoints for whatever reason, but also like seeing the cruelty and the suffering because you're trying to change these things. So can you tell us a little bit more about kind of like the foundation of where like where you're coming from as far as like the values that global animal law brings into the mission?
When we created the Global Animal Law GAL Association, I already had 20 or 30 years of background in animal welfare organizations and in the field also as an attorney. I felt the necessity to find something simple, like to say, we work with a warm heart and a cool brain. So we should not over identify ourselves with the suffering of animals. If we take the suffering of animals as our personal cause, we, let's say, spoil the energy field towards a hunter, towards a farmer, towards a representative of the animal experiment industry, and so on. And I learned the last 40 years that I'm engaged with not to over identify my person with the suffering of the animals and often also of the people. This does not mean that I'm getting cold hearted. I had to promise to my uncle that knew a lot of attorneys. I had to promise to him it's okay that I'm getting an attorney, but you have to promise me that you stay a human being.
Hmm.
So there are attorneys that are getting cynical. There are a lot of people in the animal welfare uh, field, animal rights field, that I think they uh, they lose patience. They are getting passive aggressive. They are cynical, and by that, it's also machinery. The more cynical and aggressive you are, the more frustrated you get, and the more frustrated you get, the less success you can have because you cannot uh, uh, pursue uh, a state attorney, a district attorney. If you just tell him if he does not this and that, you he's a bad person. So to get a certain warm-hearted distance to what we are doing is maybe a good thing. I also realized that for myself, I get a maybe a little bit spiritual background. I meditate a lot. I read the books of, let's say, Padmasambhava, a Tibetan monk in the year of 780 to 800, who brought Buddhism from India to Tibet, um, who, who told a princess, our role in life is to participate, to reduce suffering, and to promote well-being. So what I am doing, what you are doing, Jen, what our friends in the field and those who are viewing this podcast, they can also look at their work as having a certain role in life. And it's a privilege to work in that field and to be, let's say, warm heartedly proud of it and not, and the more frustrated you get, the less effect you have, and the life quality diminishes. So The happier you are, the more convincing you are. You need humor, you need culture, you need parties, you need, let's say, wine and cheese in Switzerland to be part of the solution and not of the problem. This is a bit, in a very short way, the mindset I have. And when we choose people for the global animal law um, organizations, and we have about 130 law professors and specialized animal attorneys worldwide that are following us more or less actively. I want to be more active in the next years, bringing animal welfare and animal health in the United Nations with a UN convention that we drafted. So by that, if we have the possibility, we take those people that, let's say, that we like to hug and not those that we have to endure when we are in discussion.
Yeah, so I imagine that keeping that cool, keeping the warm heart while also having a cool head, I imagine that that was not always easy for you. Was there a time, in your younger days when you first started out that this really impacted your mental health and maybe you were angry or cynical or depressed or any of those types of things?
Yes.
Hmm. Yeah, it
So,
happens to the best of us.
no, of course, no, this is why they are the best. So, um, close friends and relatives went all through depression. And I know people who say they prefer to work with people who went through depression because they look at the dark side of life. And when they can come over it without suicide or being for decades just mentally ill, they have a more active creativity and a bigger yes to life. So I had, let's say, dark phases when I felt alone. I was, as I said, worldwide unique. And The Guardian wrote in 2010, the leading animal welfare lawyer globally. And we had a political issue that I was 3 years in charge of that duty of official animal welfare attorney, and then the office was banned in consequence also from a people's initiative from an animal welfare organization who wanted this animal attorney not only in our canton but in all Switzerland. So they overloaded the boat and I had to pay the price. And I thought, this is my learning. Is it me that has been abolished or only the office and the role that I had? So I took several years to get distance of it and said, it's a privilege for me, besides working as an attorney, also work for animals. And I started to learn to take um, things less on a personal level. And by that, I thought, what can I do else without over identifying myself, as I said, with the suffering of animals on one side, and to over identify myself with the role that I have, be it in the control system of of farms and households where animals are mistreated, or a state attorney who has to do with animal suffering every day, or being responsible for an animal shelter that always lacks of money, has a no kill policy, and sees the suffering because there are too many dogs and cats and so on. So, to, let's say, I tried to see the human animal relationship on a more subtle and uh, warm hearted, distant way so that I also could feel what I feel and realize what I think. So to step out of this kind of busy bee thing and the thousand monkeys in our head that block us.
Yeah, I think a lot of my listeners, and myself included, can definitely relate to that over identification, whether it's with the suffering of animals, right? Like just feeling that suffering, or even over identifying with the role that you have, right? So I am an animal protection attorney. And the problem is sometimes people can lose sight of the other parts of who they are, and that can cause a lot of mental anguish as well. And so you mentioned some of the things that you like to do to kind of cope with all of this. So you mentioned the meditation. What other kind of coping strategies do you really rely on to make sure that you are staying to make sure that this career is sustainable for you so that you don't burn out?
Maybe the panic of being burnt out is bigger than being in this phase itself, meaning that um, it's part of our work to take into account that this can happen. And the burnout prevention is not only in the animal welfare field, we have a very high and over uh, a very high level of suicides and burnout in the veterinarian field. They feel this tension of animal suffering and the stubbornness of the animal keepers and the farmers, etc. They feel it on a day-by-day basis, and they have to cope with also being, let's say, professionals, being accepted and very important in society. So the burnout prevention thing is a big thing also. And we don't speak about politics in the United States or in Russia right now, but the
All right.
but the but the challenge of coping with the, let's say, obscenities of daily life force us to rearrange ourselves. And for that, what I do, I read a lot, and I read good literature. I'm just also involved with a project from the German Swiss author Hermann Hesse, wrote Steppenwolf in Zurich exactly 100 years ago. Want to bring his ideas of being more humorous, uh, being more open for pleasures, and to be open for the, let's say, high culture and art, like he described Goethe and Mozart. I love that. Um, so specifically find myself, like when we give birds water in summer in a basin, and we have 10 or 20 birds that are drinking that water, and it's always a big dance and a chatter, and it just makes happy. So if we do not nourish ourselves specifically with the intention of investing ourselves because it's necessary of doing our work right, animals and animal welfare organizations need us in a good mental health. So all those who say, or that for 10 or 20 years, that they are always overwhelmed by what they are doing, they they lose a bit of attractivity on one side, and on the other side, they do not realize when they crack and they burn out completely and they're out of their job, let's say for 3 or 5 years, they often leave a mess behind them because they are the ones that knows how it goes with the bookkeeping, with the social media, the computer, and and they do not take real responsibility towards their work by when they avoid investing in their with themselves. I remember when I got a lomi lomi massage once that the teacher in Hawaii told me you have to play with your keiki kane, so with the inner child, every day. I found that childish, but realized, okay, take you Vahine for the little girl in yourself to integrate the soul and let's say, yeah, the child in you, the charming child in you, and to hug that child every day is something that is an investment in myself in order to better do my work.
And so, does that, all those things that you do to kind of nurture yourself, nurture your soul, does that help you with maintaining hope? Because when it comes to animal protection, change is so slow.
I laugh because I have a statue behind me. Yeah, you might see it. So it's a statue of a Tibetan monk, Padmasambhava, who explained to the princess, and he told her, and this changed a little bit my point of views. I do not hope, because when I hope that animals are less suffering, I delegate the energy in something that I cannot influence. So if I trust not in hope, but in my work that I'm doing, that I can influence, that I can change something, then I take the responsibility for myself. And I do not define myself by the way of what I hoped um, will be manifested or not. So just doing my thing, knowing that I chose this role by my own means. So it's not others that forced me to do what I did. So it's my choice and my privilege that I can do something for reducing uh, suffering. The times are changing and will be changing.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I think so much has happened already. It's hard. It's easy to lose sight that these times they are a changing, as Bob Dylan said. How do you see the times continuing to change? Like, what do you think the next 40 years? I don't know if I'm going to be here in 40 years. I don't know if you're going to be here in 40 years, but if you could kind of imagine what animal protection will look like in the next 4 decades, what do you think? What kind of advances do you think that we'll see?
I see a lot of big steps ahead. I described the big steps ahead on the global animal law.org website, where we created a pattern, what we can do from the local level in law to the district level, like the states in the United States, on the federal level, so all America or the canton of Switzerland, continental wise and globally, from in law making, law enforcement, and education, and uh, divided into what is modern, so, no, what is quick, what is modern, what is visionary, and let's say from Thomas More speaking, what is utopian. So
Mm.
we see exactly, we brought that into a timeline, and you can play with that wheel on our website. This is fun. So we have visions to say that animal welfare is accepted by all member states of the United Nations, or of all 193 or around nations, that the animal welfare level does not depend too much on the culture and history of states, but that they realize that, let's say, the farming conditions in China, in Argentina, in the US, and Switzerland should be, let's say, um, put together on a high level to have more or less the same standards, and we know what the needs of these animals are. So I there is no reason to stay against the need. I foresee uh, higher animal welfare and higher uh, um, health standards. The pharmaceutical industry is right now a little bit getting more open to AI supported research. They will, for the moment, it's not transparent on a global level. They will reduce the keeping of mice and rats and of dogs and cats these for animal testing, and it could be also made on the global level. So what has been um, worked on in Argentina shall be, because under the same conditions, shall be the same as being found in Shanghai or in Moscow. So this also is a tendency that I do foresee, and there is so much money around, incredibly lot of money, that I foresee that wealthy people, you call them billionaires in the States, they can be part not only of the problem, but also of the solution, that we could create animal friendly investments so that this money can support industries that are using animals to give animals better housing conditions, better slaughtering conditions, and that the money that is one reason for animal mistreatment, especially when it goes into the animal use industry of pharmaceutical, farm animals, uh, companion animals, wild animals, and sports animals, that the money that goes in to support animal suffering can also be directed into more animal welfare. We could also speak of, let's say, animal rights, or at least to give animals a voice in criminal and administrative um, procedures. So I see that if we open our mind and see animal welfare not only as a ouch, this poor animal is suffering, but see the interconnection to animal health and to human health, and support the One Health principle in a robust way, I see a lot of positive changes to come uh, into into force in the next, let's say, decades. Also, that in animal use industry and a lot of UN member states, as long as the United Nations uh, uh, will exist without the American funding, but on the global level, that they see if they support this idea, they will of more animal welfare and more animal health. They can easily support the idea of bringing animal health and protection on the UN level, and to give animals a voice as we describe it therein. So by that, I do think that all our listeners of your very precious and important podcast, Jen, um, will will probably see tendencies that the global awareness for the, let's say, animal issue is growing, and they are part of that. And the better they look, or better you that are listening and watching this podcast, the better you look for yourself, the better and more credible and more long term uh, the work is for the animals, and the more important your work is in the field.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, Antoine. I mean, I think, I don't know anyone who doesn't want to do this for the long term. I mean, this is not just a hobby for most people. This is a passion burning in their heart, and we've got, I'm going to say this like a broken record. screaming off of the mountaintops, but we've got to take care of ourselves so we can make this work sustainable. Because even if you don't see change right away, it's you're part of that change. There's going to come a day, and I hope it's in our lifetime. I think there's going to come a day when animal testing for things like pharmaceuticals and cosmetics is a thing of the past. And we look back on it with like we're horrified, right? That it ever was a thing. And we might not see that today or tomorrow or next year, but I think we're going to see that in the next 40 years. And I hope that's just one of many changes. And it's all thanks to people like you, Antoine, and it's thanks to people like my listeners. And so
Exactly.
I can't thank you enough for all of the work you do, for coming on here and sharing your experiences and sharing your own struggles and management of mental health. And so is there anything else that you would like to mention that maybe we haven't talked about, or even how people can learn more about Global Animal Law Association?
Well, thank you very much. So our website, I think, is a good step into this world. We open up now also in the field of economy, because only the law is too small. And there is, I do not know if the booklet is translated in US American, but Arthur Schopenhauer, a German philosopher, wrote a charming booklet. There are 50 reasons to be happy.
Mm.
And the main reason, so you should not be envious and so on and so forth. You should yeah. And the main reason to be happy is, he said, Heiterkeit, so to stay in humor and have a, let's say, constructive attitude, and to laugh more. The more you laugh, the less you take what happens to you, let's say, seriously and destructive, and it changes your mind shift. And by that, laughing opens the hearts of the people that you deal with, that you think you could, let's say, fly me or send me to the moon. And if you can keep your charm, the impact of what you are doing for the animals, for the other person, and especially for yourself, and if you acknowledge what you have done this day or this weekend or this night more, I think this sounds so small, but it's very big.
Absolutely. 100%. All right, Antoine. Well, I'm going to put the website link in the show notes page if people want to learn more about global animal law or GAL. Again, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for all that you do. And I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Thank you very, very much for what you are doing and all the listeners to the podcast. It's very important what we are doing, and let's work together.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Antoine. Take
Thank
care.
you very much, Jen.
Bye
Bye
bye.
bye.